Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Maylene and today I will be talking about fashion, in particular minimalism, and specifically for those who are interested in men's fashion. Minimalism in fashion has been around for a few decades now. It has seen a surge of interest in recent years following the explosive success of the KonMari method by Marie Kondo and in the subsequent realization that an overstuffed closet and junk around the home can overwhelm one's life. Therefore, by taking back control over your closet and your home, you may seize control of your life again. Some of my favorite influencers in fashion describe a minimalist approach to a closet that only has 33 articles of clothing. See Project 333 by Courtney Carver. I practiced a version of this by maintaining between 27 to 30 pieces of clothing for a year. The results were a consolidation of my personal identity, a severe approach to shopping, and a high percentage of utilization of my clothing. I had no more clothes hidden in the back of a closet, odd clothes that only suited special occasions, or clothes in a disparate style that I couldn't complete an outfit with. More of my effort went into investing in higher quality pieces so that I can finally fixate on my ultimate goal, developing a recognizable personal brand. Normally, topics related to fashion are more women-focused than men-focused, but in the case of minimalism, men have become some of the most world-shaking influencers. Here is my analysis of some of the most notorious minimalists of the current age. Mark Zuckerberg. The first name to come to mind is the infamous reptilian overlord of Western society. I kid. Mark Zuckerberg is the privileged genius who dropped out of Harvard to concentrate on the success of his business. In the early days of Facebook, he was often invited to speak in front of influential people and business leaders, and he would attend in flip-flops. Most of his new peers made eyes at his attire, but none dared to speak up. Mark was different, but they needed him. Whereas the typical businessman spent a significant amount of time perfecting his public image in order to represent his stature and importance, he was suddenly faced with the bold new generation. Mark's extreme casual style was a major subversion to the classical image of a wealthy and powerful man. His youth further exacerbated this. Far from having a humble suburban background, Mark attended the prestigious private school Philip Exeter Academy, where he was no doubt indoctrinated in the rules of classical New England society. He is fully equipped with the know-how of asserting himself at the round table, and most certainly attended school with the children of world leaders. But none of these influences apparently convinced him to wear leather shoes. Mark Zuckerberg single-handedly influenced generations of techies. Job interviews became the first place where leaders and newbies across the industry would clash. Hopeful students would optimistically wear an ill-fitted suit off the rack at Zara just to find that their interviewers wore t-shirts branded with tech-related slogans, many of which were passed out at trade fairs for free. The insistence towards casual attire in software and technology became a new strict social norm, as personal styles became less and less prevalent across corporate offices. The regular bundles of free company t-shirts, the large influxes of new graduates who were indoctrinated in the extreme casual mindset, mixed with cubicle-free co-working attitudes that made formal attire look like a clown costume. I knew it was time for me to leave software development when a colleague in Gucci slides was derided for over-obsession with material wealth. I had a pair of pumps collecting dust in my closet and a handbag obsession that I maintained in a shameful secret. Being fashion-oriented was like contraband, and I couldn't live a lie anymore. Now, is Mark Zuckerberg a minimalist? Compared to the average person, yes. However, he is not the strictest minimalist on the list today. Although he is seen sporting a similar casual t-shirt ranging from gray to blue, he has been photographed wearing shirts of different styles. His approach to fashion is also not so nonchalant as it appears. Many of his shirts are custom made by Brunello Cucinelli. What Mark's style is rather that of comfort. Despite having one of the largest personal wealths in the world, he has kept the same aesthetic since he was young. It would be unusual to see him explore the latest trends at this point. Having lived in one city for decades, having the same job for decades, the same partner, and the same close professional connections, an evolution in personal style is hardly necessary. His minimalism is a natural consequence to an uncomplicated persona, combined with a preference in innovation and exploration in other realms. Steve Jobs. A notorious minimalist, Steve Jobs is the former CEO of Apple who passed away in 2011 from pancreatic cancer. The numerous articles written about his unchanging clothing and ascetic lifestyle lauded his extreme attitudes towards minimalism. A photograph of himself in a barren home stands in contrast to the majority of overfilled homes of that era. Photographs of him through the decades demonstrate his commitment to the notorious uniform, a black turtleneck, jeans, and sneakers. Considering his position at Apple, it is also a surprise to see that he eschewed grand displays of wealth. He is often photographed wearing a Seiko, and he drives a Mercedes-Benz SL55 AMG, which he swaps every 3 months so he can legally drive without a license plate. Was there an advantage to his minimalism? Many people imitated his style in order to borrow the Steve Jobs mindset, taking on a tangible and easily replicable part of his personality in order to manifest their own success. Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos being the most notorious example of this. It is more likely, however, that minimalism is just a side effect to a more interesting personality. He was very particular about what he liked and disliked, allegedly turning down different oxygen masks at the later stages of his illness because he didn't like the way they looked. Although perplexing, there are many theories on why he may have refused what seems to us to be an easy solution to his suffering. Considering how he had been able to control many aspects of his life in the face of death, people might develop a thought process that is difficult for observers to understand. Perhaps he chose emotional reasoning to combat the obvious logical solutions that would undermine his ability to control a situation. Or perhaps it was something else. The life of Steve Jobs leads me to think about the need for a role model in minimalism in order to motivate other minimalists. The vast majority of imitators already had an inkling towards minimalism. They may have never enjoyed dressing up, they may have perceived fashion as frivolous, and they may have also seen very little value in clutter. They may have had other values for which an out-of-control public image and home space could be a major distraction. In the tech industry, from the dot-com bubble to the rapid rise of startups following the success of Facebook, many of the most ambitious and intelligent young people took an interest in the lucrative opportunity to not only advance their status in society, but also permanently alter society itself. Technology today has become an indispensable part of life, where WhatsApp has become an acceptable messaging platform for business in parts of the world, Gmail becoming a versatile business and personal tool, and the current post-pandemic debate on whether physical offices are even necessary. In this era, Soylent saw a rapid rise, as obesity and malnutrition became a major concern for people who work or live surrounded by technology. The time and energy it took to nourish oneself became extraneous to the immense pressure of keeping up with a competitive industry. Coming from a startup-focused engineering program, I was inclined to believe that minimalism was simply a punishment. But now, having worked in other industries, and now that I am learning how to sit still in order to harness creativity, I can finally see the other side of minimalism. For Steve Jobs, his minimalism was not a result of accepting a society that deprioritized the simplistic human interest in self-adornment, but rather a result of his own neurotic tendencies. His success at running Apple was a combination of his neuroticisms with his intelligence and high standards. The negative sides to his personality was no small issue, as it led to his temporary termination from Apple. His minimalism, as well, is just a combination of the same factors. Robert Pattinson. Actor Robert Pattinson reached global fame at a young age after appearing in multiple well-known franchises geared towards the youth. He has continued to perform with great versatility, maintaining great popularity among audiences while also maintaining his unconventional personality. It came to no surprise to me that he had a minimalist approach to clothing. He stated in an interview that he only had a few pieces of clothing, while the clothes he wore on the red carpet were borrowed. It is sensible for red carpet outfits to be borrowed clothing, since the publicity is great for the designers and often they are a loan from the fashion brand or a part of a larger library maintained by a red carpet stylist. Robert maintains a steady public image as someone who is laid back and unbothered by his public perception. His clothing choices are consistent in their practicality and fit. Rick Owens. Rick Owens subverts from the conventional attitude towards fashion designers being the largest hoarders of clothing by instead committing to a minuscule closet. Would you assume fashion designers hoard clothing more than other types of people? For example, Chiara Ferragni, a social media personality turned fashion brand owner, regularly flaunts her closet overflowing with Chanel bags. TV personality Kim Kardashian's closet is larger than my whole apartment. Aside from having a large personal collection, it's safe to also assume that the fashion design process also produces a lot of fabric scraps, and those books of samples from suppliers can easily pile up. Fashion design as an occupation, however, is distinct from collection and consumption, as it is noteworthy that my prior examples were actually socialites who prioritize dressing up as part of their lifestyle. Additionally, all professions are equally capable of choosing how they maintain their personal space and organization. Rick Owens is a minimalist in his home, calling himself an eliminator rather than a collector. Like some other contemporary designers, the space in which he creates needs to reflect his mind. From artistic sculptures to gym equipment taking over the living area, his home reflects that his process of creation takes on a tenacious, focused approach. He is clearly an artist, where fashion is a reflection of not only what exists in our society, but also of what he wishes our society can become. Referencing himself as a futurist, I contemplated on whether minimalism had any relevance to futurism. In the 1990s, futurism was showcased on Star Trek: The Next Generation as becoming a utopian society. Technology was fully responsive and comprehensive, while the clothing was functional. Shiny fabrics brought focus to material science, and the form appeared to be custom and practical. What does futurism look like for people today? In our current environment of pessimism, for the very tangible threat of World War III, the decades of failed climate activism, and the fears of societal collapse as a result of late-stage capitalism, perhaps the collective vision of a future is not quite so utopic. Instead of the prior vision of an expansive and cooperative place, futurists of today might envision a more peaceful type of utopia, where the freedom to indulge our creative proclivities could be a reasonable long-term goal. Minimalism can be a reasonable lifestyle to expect for the century ahead, in which we live in a society where consumption and destruction are no longer interesting. A return to the simpler things and a freedom from the constraints which currently limit our society.